Welcome to the latest edition in our series, Leadership Lessons in Troubled Times. These free online fireside chats are brought to you by the Schulich Executive Education Center, or SEEC. My name is Robert Lin. I'm Associate Director at SEEC and moderator of today's session, Leadership Lessons from Cadillac Fairview. Our guest is Jose Ribau, Executive Vice President, Digital and Innovation at Cadillac Fairview. Jose will discuss how Cadillac Fairview took the opportunity during the pandemic to pivot and accelerate CF's use of innovation to improve the client experience for retail post-COVID-19, including new tools for both consumers and property managers like Ribau. Jose will be interviewed this morning by Alan Middleton, SEEC's Executive Director. If you have any questions during this session, please feel free to use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. We will try to ask as many of your questions as time permits. Also, this session is being video recorded for those who are unable to attend the live session today. Now, let's get started. Alan, over to you.
Thank you, Robert, and welcome, Jose. It's great to have you here. Great to have you on. And I love having him on for three reasons. Number one, because he's an IT guy in a world of Cadillac Fairview and its property management. And we're going to be talking about that crossover, which has become even more important now. And also because he looks so relaxed and at home, enjoying himself. Welcome, Jose.
Thank you. So nice to see you, Alan.
Thanks for coming on. So let's talk a little bit about the future, because these sort of less informed are all panicking about, oh my God, people won't go into the office, so property values are going to go down, nobody's going to go shopping, people won't be into offices. But you have gone through looking at how this IT world and how if you like, the real property world is evolving. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you see it?
Absolutely. I think first I should recognize that these are certainly unprecedented times, and one, in a period of our life where it's normal to feel that way, and it's completely normal to question what the future looks like because it's changing every day. And so what I can share with you is what we know so far based on our own experience, and we have introduced a number of measures to safely return clients to properties. In the office in particular, the experience is quite different right now. Not only do we have to address jurisdictional limits on how many people can be present in an office environment, but even something as simple as going up an elevator now has restrictions on the number of people that can go in at any given time. And so when you add all that up, it creates quite a different experience than before. And what our tenants and clients are telling us is that they know in the future it'll be a stronger blend of working remotely combined with in-office experience. The idea of moving away completely from working in an office, and I know that some companies like Twitter and Shopify have mentioned that they're going to be digital first, and that all works up to a certain point. But depending on the type of business you do, being in the office and engaging not only socially, but to ensure you have alignment and a strong team culture really matters, and it does help progress things along. As a matter of fact, some clients are rethinking their use of the floor plate to take advantage of this opportunity to create more open spaces that allow for physical distancing and maximize the space differently. So we think that the occupancy will look different, not necessarily decline at a drastic rate, because they need more space to stretch out. And the types of teams that work together, while they might be doing a lot of that work remotely, there's just some things that are better done in person. And as an example, I had the team in the office yesterday, a small group of us, to just align on our strategic planning. And you get a lot of the in-person alignment that is hard to get over a remote call. The nonverbal cues, the little side chats, and in today's work from home predominantly, in that approach, it's hard to do that informal check-in because not everybody feels comfortable just picking up the phone and calling or what have you. So I think there's room for both, but it is a bit of a moving target right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to pick up on your point about shared culture and that interpersonal, particularly important for onboarding and new people coming on. I mean, we'll talk a bit later about how you managed to pivot going on, but I'm sure a large part of that was because you had a team culture who knew each other, who went online and could pivot very quickly. Much more difficult to do if you've not actually sat down with anybody.
That's a great point. We have, we looked at the number of open positions about 2 weeks into COVID, and went through an assessment of, are they critical, are they important, but could be done later, and which ones could we defer or cancel. And we agreed on, as an exec team, we agreed on the A list of critical roles that we needed to hire, and we've onboarded those individuals remotely. The secret really is to ensure that those people have a network of remote buddies, if you will, within the company that they can count on to understand the culture and understand how to get things done. Because joining a company remotely and not going into an environment where you meet your colleagues face to face, it can be quite daunting. I mean, it's daunting to join a company to begin with. Then on top of that, doing it all remotely. So we've had to adapt quickly. We've had a number of checkpoints. So, for example, we recently just had someone who started. We welcome them as part of our senior leadership team. Then I've got a check-in booked with them to just get to know them a little bit and share a little bit of our inside, personal views and who we are. Those steps really matter. So I think you just have to go that extra mile. But it certainly doesn't replace the in-person. But onboarding, I would say, is difficult. And it's harder to gauge whether the productivity, the person's comfort level, the culture, whether all those things are landing. But as leaders, I think that's one thing we just have to recognize is we still need strong talent. And we need to find a way to do it remotely and safely. And so we just have to find a way through.
We had talked, and a number of our previous speakers had talked about, when you come into a crisis, like, have you at least got some semblance of a plan that you work on, even though it may adapt? And you and I talked about that a little bit. So how did that work at Cadillac with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the example we were talking about, which I'll share again here, is, we had a very strong and still have a very strong technology department that was primarily focused on what I call in-property infrastructure, network infrastructure, keep the buildings operating and running properly, everything from elevators to cyber for the building to the actual electricity that runs the place and servers to run the building. But over the last few months, over the last couple of years, actually, we've been moving a lot of our service desk to the cloud, all of our remote capabilities, so we could actually support clients on an extended hourly basis from West Coast to East Coast and through the different time zones. As a result of that process, from a business recovery perspective, we had a plan. And that plan ensured that over time we were investing in network segmentation, cybersecurity, and getting our employees to be able to support our clients through pods, right? But largely located in offices. But the technology was built in the cloud and allowed us to pivot. So the minute that COVID hit, I'd say within 48 hours, we were able to translate that into a work from home process, because many of our employees were already connected to the systems that were connected to the cloud. So in fact, we were able to pivot that. And yes, we still had to go through the logistics of finding more laptops, which were going through shortages and everything else, but we didn't have to stop our work processes. They didn't come to a standstill because of the technology. We actually leveraged the technology to move more quickly. And I can't say that would have happened by design, but certainly repivot the plan to do that, and certainly very happy with how the team performed to make that happen. So it's just, you're exactly right. You've got to have a plan, work towards it, but be prepared to pivot it for another purpose.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about we talked before about the new products that you've been developing with technology products for your clients and customers, which is can potentially helping them through periods like this, because the future is going to be, as you rightly said, a much bigger blend of at home and use of technology as well as physicality. So, although we will be physical, it will be blended much more. And you're stepping up as a supplier in that area.
Yes, I think the best way to tell the story is, part of the reason why we created the role in the team and I joined was to create a better retail experience that could better compete with the e-commerce giants that are out there.
Yep.
And when you compare a physical shopping experience generally to buying online is pretty seamless. You know, you go to a website, you potentially go to a storefront that's been aggregated through a marketplace, find your products, you could cross shop across a number of different brands. There's one shopping cart and it gets delivered. When you compare that to the physical shopping experience where you have to go and browse literally in person, well, how do you do that post-COVID when many customers are encouraged to not browse? So again, similar to the story we just talked about with IT, we had been working on a digital shopping app that would allow the customer to navigate through the property. And what we spent the last few months during COVID was incorporating features such as finding products and being able to search for a product. So we launched this new digital shopping app called Live by CF that allows a customer to start searching products before they get to the property. So let's say you want to try on a pair of Converse at Softmock. You can search the Softmock product, size, color, from the comfort of your home, confirm that the size is there. Then when you go to the property, to that store, you know you can walk out with that product. So we've got over 600,000 SKUs, over 60 retailers that are participating so far. And we launched it post-COVID, or during COVID actually, to help alleviate that pressure point in the property and make it more seamless. So it's an example of blending the online and offline, because this trend isn't going to go anywhere.
Yep.
And I don't know about you, but you know, any retail experience that I have, the enjoyment is actually in getting in and out.
Yep.
And getting in and out safely.
Yeah.
And so the lens that we have to look at things now that we're using is efficiency and safety, right? So this isn't an app that we're doing because we necessarily want to monetize it, you know, day one. It's about helping the customer, building a tool, and as you can imagine, the directory. So you'd walk into a property, we still have them; they're physically there, but we've turned off the functionality where you can touch the screen. So imagine if we turned off the screen and didn't have the second option. So now we are encouraging customers download the app, use that instead. You got them all in your pocket, right? So putting them all in your pocket allows you to still stay in business and support the retailers in a much more seamless kind of e-commerce friendly way.
Yeah, yeah. When we were chatting about this session, one of the things you talked about was the role of government and regulation going forward. And we've seen shifts over time from planning zones where you couldn't have work and residence in the same areas. That's changing around. How have you seen the role of the government as it affected your sector and going forward? How can it help out on this?
It's a good question. There's federal, municipal, provincial, and everything that goes in between. I think the best example I can give you is a recent land bank acquisition we made in downtown Toronto called East Harbour, which is a large parcel of land that could allow up to 10 million square feet of development. But what's really triggering not only our interest, but the role that the government can play is that it has the potential to create a secondary hub of transit in the downtown core, just east of downtown, to take pressure off Pearson.
Yeah.
And so if you think of it from a public transit perspective, that becomes a hub that really gets alignment between the province of Ontario, the local municipality, and the development and residential interest. Under normal circumstances, that would be very difficult to do on our own. And the entitlement process would take a long time. But because we're all motivated to do the same thing, which is, you know, have people, especially now in this work from home environment, imagine if you could work from home and literally the office and the home are close to each other and the amenities are there, and you could have food delivered and have everything done as part of an ecosystem. That kind of vision can't be done without government help. And so we see governments, whether they're municipal or federal or provincial, as key partners of ours. And I think we should probably do a better job as developers of helping the public understand our role in that. You know, building communities and building vibrant communities in particular, which is our purpose as a company, is something that people really respond to.
Yeah.
And that's how you end up building a sense of community, is by literally working with the government, not against the government. And I think Cadillac Fairview over its tenure has has built up very strong reputations in the cities and communities that we operate. For that reason, government continues to play a role. The second thing I'll quickly mention is
Please.
the recent interest on the part of the federal government to invest in artificial intelligence and the use of digital data to help inform and better compete globally. So Scale AI is one example of a Montreal-based, and they recently initiated some investments at Mars as well in Toronto to accelerate supply chain and use of artificial intelligence in those data sets to help retailers succeed and compete. And that's in part because Canada and the US have not invested to the same extent that, you know, companies in China and East Asia have. And so competitively, it's good to see that the government is also standing up to support those technology companies and that technology in particular, which applies to a number of industries, not just ours.
Yeah, it's interesting how old practices hang on for a long time, because the idea of traveling to work, which is a separate location from residence or entertainment or shopping, goes really back to the Industrial Revolution, where you didn't want people plonking a production plant right next to you. But now we want to go in the opposite direction.
That's right.
So
That's
that
right.
kind of inter-segment, government, private sector, not-for-profit sector, cooperation is more needed than ever for the future. Yeah. How do you see your role in an environment like this? Because your background, Jose, was, if I'm right, financial services, some of the big banks, and you're making the move into this area. Is it like we've been talking with healthcare providers, where the use of technology through COVID is going to accelerate because of distance working in terms of diagnosis? How do you see that and the influence in the whole property sector?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. So part of my interest in this work is the physical assets have largely been buildings in which a community can thrive, whether that's an office community, residence, or retail. But when we look at how our constituents want to interact with those buildings, it's the digital amenities, it's the ability to quickly find something, it's the ability to get in and out. And so the role of tech in real estate, and I'm not just talking about property tech or smart building tech, I think that was already well in motion, is how do you own more of that customer experience and turn that into something positive that keeps the customer coming back? So like any other industry who wants to compete, when we look at Apple or other big tech players, it's the client experience that drives their innovation and their interest in investing. Similarly, that's what's happening with Cadillac Fairview, is we see an opportunity to take a stronger leadership role and not just define the buildings as beautiful physical assets, but an ecosystem that allows the customer to better interact with the property. And I'll give you an example. Yesterday, when I mentioned I went into the office, we're one of a handful of companies that have tested this. You know, I have a digital pass card to get in the building. And so I don't have to physically touch anything, right? So how applicable is that now post-COVID for me to be able to interact with the building quite literally digitally, instead of having to get a piece of plastic, drop it, touch the reader, you know what I mean? So there's little things like that start us down a roadmap that will include food delivery and everything else that allows me to interact in such a way that you can't really do that without tech. So I think the role and what we're trying to do from an experience perspective and a brand perspective has a lot of opportunity ahead of us. We're not just learning from our competitors. We're also learning from other industries that do this. Airports. We spend time in Asia to see what other retailers have done. And so there's a lot of global examples that we're trying to learn from to do some of this work.
Big impact on the transportation infrastructures. And, you know, I won't put you on the spot talking about transportation, but, you know, the notion of downtown and availability for, and if we get back to something else, with as much traffic as before, when there's these other alternatives to help it, as a big impact for government policy. One more question, then I'm going to go to the couple of chat questions we've got. One of the trends going on before COVID was urban concentration. And I think Canada was particularly a lead in this, if you can talk about that. compared with the rest of North America. Is that a trend you see continuing, or are we going to be spreading out more, do you think?
It's a great question. You know, coincidentally, we were just doing our corporate strategy review and update over this last, couple months. And one of the things we anticipate seeing more of is what we're calling the hub and spoke model, where in suburban areas of the right concentration and density, we expect and are certainly looking to help drive some of this, which is, if you recall, call it 10 years ago, when you used to see these kind of buildings that would operate, they would set up these buildings for, say, an insurance company just off the Gardner or the 403 near Hamilton. And you see these isolated one stack buildings. And instead of that, what we anticipate is that will include amenities. Like it'll be like a hub. So you might commute 15 minutes instead of taking an hour, but it'll include a grocery outlet, retail, restaurants, dry cleaning, all the key essentials that you could actually manage digitally. And in fact, take advantage of going to that location by having amenities embedded within that, and likely have more than one employer. Yeah. So imagine what I just described at one of our malls, right, where we're densifying. We're actually doing that at Richmond Center in BC right now. There's a project underway where we're adding condos, residential, gardens, retail around the outside, literally attached to the shopping center, Richmond Center. And so people will essentially be able to live, work, and play within their community, within their boundaried community. And so this is happening in real time. So we do see that happening, probably less just concentrated in urban areas, but spread out, but more of a hub and spoke type approach, as opposed to purely remote from home and then only going into downtown cities.
Yeah, and also I can add in one quick thought with vertical agriculture, which is developing. You've now got some developments going on where you're growing the plants, in efficient manners, as well as having people live there, shop there, and drive in theatre as well. So I'm going to go to a couple of questions. This is Margaret Beattie. Many not-for-profits are concerned that their building and space are a liability. What are your thoughts at a high level for an assessment of space post-COVID? So this is, the not-for-profits feeling the pressure of having the physicality.
Yes, I think looking at that sector and anticipating, I would recommend first starting with what are the core needs you have for that nonprofit. And so some nonprofits have field teams, right? If the field teams rely less on physical space, then obviously you're well suited to this post-COVID world. But the nonprofit that needs to physically be located close to its constituents, I think there's still room for that, and in fact might be in a position of advantage, right? Because some smaller companies or companies who don't require as big of a floor plate, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the rent that would normally be charged at a higher rate will become an opportunity for some of these nonprofits. So I think that the nonprofit sector, if anything, the challenges might be, how do they stay close to the decision makers that they're trying to influence or participate in the nonprofit, and knowing how they get to those nonprofits. Oh, sorry, that's my fire alarm for some reason.
You okay? You're not going to burn down?
No, I'm okay. But what I will do is I'm going to head outside so that doesn't annoy you.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, as we go on, I'm going to go to another question when Jose comes back from his alarm. Hope he's okay. But just a point while he's on, not-for-profits can also engage, if we are going to go to this community-based redevelopment, then the not-for-profits can choose their community areas where they can engage. But the other thing, and I'll confess my involvement here, I'm on a board of a great not-for-profit organization called Canada Helps, which helps 25,000 not-for-profits work online. But enough from me. Welcome back, Jose. You're all right. You didn't burn down.
So far, I don't know.
Okay, this is from. You okay?
Yep.
Okay, this is from Magdalia Jones. Looking into the changes you are incorporating, plus the new life post-COVID, where do you see the skills and experience you need when you're hiring? Great question. Okay,
So
I think
can you
yeah,
can you hear me okay?
this is good.
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So we do a lot of our sourcing from other technology companies and digital marketing agencies. And so we're still seeing a lot of talent that's available from those sources. And people are really excited by this idea of changing how an industry operates with its
Absolutely.
constituents. So there is a ton of talent. And in fact, I'll give you a couple of recent examples. There's been a few. So Foodora is an example of a company that has decided to not continue in Canada, but there's a ton of Canadian employees that are available that we certainly are aware of and on our radar. So I think that as other changes happen in the industry, we can be a net hiring firm of change that happens to individuals. And so there is still a lot of great talent out there, not just from those industries, but also from telco. And there's quite an active market right now, which is good to see.
Mm, yeah, and the way you're painting, this is an exciting industry to be involved in. So, good opportunities. This is from Mark Silver. End consumers are encouraged by your tenants to download their B2C apps. How do you plan, or he says plan to change or influence customer behavior so the CF Live app is their go-to app before heading to the mall? That makes sense?
It does, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it'll come down to customers. We're doing some light marketing of the initiative and the program to make sure people are aware of it. But I like to think of it as we certainly encourage retailers to have a great digital footprint and interact with customers. And these are ultimately the retailer's customers. So we're not, claiming to take ownership for that retail journey. But if we make it as easy as possible for the customer to search across a cross-section of retailers, get the offer or the brands that make the most sense, and then help that customer find their way to that retailer, we think over time the customer will appreciate that aggregated service. And so it's complementary to the existing direct-to-consumer app or experience that the retailers have. But what our research told us, what consumers are telling us is, instead of me having 12 or 14 different apps, it would be great if I could get a first summary high-level view. If I'm just looking for jeans, what options do I have for jeans? And so our app allows you to search for, jeans, black high heels, leather jacket, toque, red hoodie, and you're going to get a variety of hits. And that gives the customer, where it's all about the search funnel and discovery, better discovery, find the retailer, go to the property and or buy from the website eventually. And so we just want to be participating in that type of ecosystem so that the customer has choice.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to the last question. This is from Hanifa. Hi, Jose. I was on a webinar where the conversation turned to enabling better planning between buildings and transportation to accommodate trucking delivery to minimize traffic and enable efficient loading docks. Great question, and let me add to it, give you some thought, which is the amount of home delivery that is taking place. It won't necessarily be the big trucks coming down, there'll be lots of small deliveries. So if that's just additive to what traffic was like in the big urban areas, we are going to be looking at some nightmare areas. So how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, if I use Purelator as an example of one of the most innovative delivery partners, at least that we've worked with. The good news is that these same companies who drive these trucks and manage the distribution network are thinking about that now. And so they have to deal with a very important structural difference, which is those trucks and those routes were designed to deliver bigger B2B packages in shorter number. Now it's higher number, smaller packages. So they themselves, from a fleet management perspective, have actually been testing smaller, less impactful delivery methods. And so we as a building operator in that transition between loading dock and truck, we're actually thinking about different ways to accept, manage, and send some of those retail packages too. What role do we play in making that distribution network more efficient? And so you're absolutely right. I mean, the good news is that that's not lost on the distribution networks themselves.
Yeah.
They are thinking now about how to make it more efficient and less impactful, both to the environment and to the traffic congestion.
Yeah. Jose, we're at an end, but I want to hand you back for any final thoughts you have. So much about leadership going through the crisis and how you've clearly managed it so well. But what you're painting, I mean, I wish I was 30 years younger. I'd be applying for a job with Cadillac Fairview and you.
I love it. Thank
but
you.
What kind of
nice
things do you see for the future? I mean, other than getting the health fix, sounds like you're an optimist for the industry.
No, you know what? It's there's a lot of potential. There's fertile ground for doing more, and we want to help these retailers succeed. That's the fundamental reason why I come in every day or do what we do every day. I would say on the personal side and as a leader, like this webinar is a perfect example of what work from home as a leader means. So we started it in my relaxed living room. You made a joke about that. Halfway through, my fire alarm went off, which we don't even know why that is. I came outside, dog barking. It is what it is. We keep going. This is the new normal, right? So being a leader that doesn't get fussed, or you as a panelist, as a moderator, not getting fussed and just knowing that we'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let perfection get in the way of good. Like, just, you know what I mean? Like that's the kind of thing we need to really embrace with our teams. You know, we've got people on the team who might go through that experience and perhaps get uncomfortable if they're presenting on a Zoom call in front of a leader. Well, guess what? It just happened to me. Like, don't worry about it. It is what it is. We all, or we've had young parents whose kids come on to show their coloring.
Or their animals.
And we bring them on. We're like, show us.
Yeah.
Come on, show us. No problem. And the employee engagement over the COVID period, because you have to engage with empathy, right? So that has actually gone up. So I think my lasting comment is, and of course, there goes my neighbor cutting the grass. My lasting comment is, like, as leaders, just thinking through how to engage as a team and know that this is a new normal. We just have to figure out how to work with it and trust that people, you know, are trying to do their best given the circumstances.
So, Jose, that's an absolute delight. Thank you. I'm going to hand back to Robert to do a close and the formal thank you, but thank you very much. Robert, back to you.
Thanks to everyone. Thanks to everyone for attending today's session. And please feel free to join us at our next session that takes place on Thursday, July 30th at 1 p.m. Leadership Lessons from the Mining Industry. Our guest will be David Garofalo, Chairman and CEO of the Marshall Precious Metal Funds and Chairman of Great Panther Mining Limited. Special thank you to Jose today for a fantastic session. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.